Tashara is an Emmy Award-winning journalist for WFAA in Dallas, Fort Worth. Her work focuses on telling community-focused stories and has received international recognition. Her most recent show, Rooted, has helped educate people about the importance of the natural hair movement in our nation. I'm honored to have her here today to talk about the intersectionality of media and public policy. Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. So happy to be here. Hello, everyone.
Yes, yes, in a virtual world, they said hello back.
Right. Thank you.
Perfect. So the first question to jump right in, I would like to start our discussion today about how you became a journalist. Was this an early passion for you, something you found later on in life? What was the journey there?
Oh, that is such a good question to kick things off. Kind of gives you a glimpse into my background before I became a journalist. And so before I got into this whole communications, media, journalism world, I was actually going to school to be a forensic psychologist. Look, I don't know how that happened. Maybe I watched a little bit too much CSI or what. So I was going to school to do that, to study forensics. And I just remember studying entomology, the study of insects, because that was one of the first steps that you had to do to even get to the point where you were doing some of the more cool stuff, cooler things.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I got to Texas A&M University. So to answer your question straight up, no, journalism was not my first love. But I got to Texas A&M University, which is where I got my undergraduate degree. And I just remember taking science classes, and I just wasn't very good at science. And I know a lot of folks out there are really great at it. Haley, you may be one of them. But science just wasn't my area. It wasn't my speed. And I was falling out of love with what I was doing. And so I just remember like going home crying. I made I believe it was like a 13 or an 8, something terrible on my first biology exam. And it literally made my heart drop to the floor. I was like, no, I'm used to making straight A's and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a shocker for me. So anyways, I went to talk to my advisor, and she started asking me all these questions. And one of the things that she did was she said, okay, what do you enjoy? What do you like? And I always like telling stories. I always like talking to people, and I always like sharing stories. And so that's where the love of journalism finally kind of uprooted itself within me. Started learning how to tell stories, learning what was important. And I've always been a person that had social impact and volunteerism at the heart of everything that I did. And so it kind of made sense for me to move into journalism. And so I got my communications degree at Texas A&M, went on to get a master's degree in journalism from DePaul University in Chicago.
Wow. Well, I know that'll be inspiring to several of my students, ones who are scared for change or scared to go to college and consider different majors than maybe what they've been thinking about for a while. And so I'm really glad
Absolutely.
that we could bring people to the table who have a story like that. It's not the end of the road. Even if you wanted to stay in that field, it's not the end of the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, to continue about the stories and your passion for telling stories, when you started your career, did you know that you wanted to use your place in the media and in the news to tell community-focused stories, or were you imagining something different with a journalism degree?
Yeah, so when I first got into journalism, I knew that I wanted to tell stories that were focused on community. I did not know that it was going to eventually be termed community focused storytelling. And that's something I came up with, by the way, because I actually enjoyed that much. But I didn't know that it was specifically going to be called that. I just knew that I wanted to tell stories about people that looked like me, that were misrepresented or underrepresented in media. And what I mean by that is the neighborhood that I grew up in, Houston, Texas, you would consider it inner city. And so, or some would consider it inner city rather. And I just remember anytime that we had a news crew, cameras, folks on TV in my neighborhood, it was not for something positive. And so I always think back to those moments, and that led me to say, okay, well, I know that we do a lot of great things. I know that people who don't look like me do a lot of great things. And I really want to make sure that I tell those stories and ensure that those people have a platform and are able to use their voices in a way that's positive. So what better way to really forge on this career of journalism than to try to use my platform to continue telling those positive, impactful stories for our community?
Absolutely, absolutely. How inspiring. I hope that my students really resonate with that and listen to that because it's very much needed in all spaces. And I'm really glad that you're leading the way in journalism.
Thank
Um,
you.
Speaking of my students, for younger people in our community, especially Gen Z, we've grown up and come of age in a time where the news media has gone through significant changes. Many of us are still learning how to decipher what is news and what's opinion. Do you have any suggestions for how my students should go about doing that?
That is such a good question. And I would say as young folks, always be willing to tap into multiple sources. I think a lot of times we're so in tune with, we'll follow one particular person on social media or one group on social media, and there should be a way for you to tap into there is a way, not should be, there is a way for you to tap into different sources, different resources, to make sure the information that you have is factual. And so one of the easiest ways to do that, aside from, let's say, the CNNs, the Fox Newses, the TikToks, the local media, all of that is important. Now, let me be very clear. All of that is important. But what I'm saying is, and all of those can be good in some way, right? Some way. Not all of them, but you can read between the lines on that one. Anyways, but what I'm saying is you have to tap into multiple different resources. But if you tap into the Associated Press, AP, that is one of the main ways you can turn on your news alerts if you really want to be tapped in or plugged in, or you can always go to AP on Twitter or Instagram. All of their information is usually where most news outlets get their sources from, their information from. Now, granted, we go and check our own sources and all those different things, but AP is usually the first breaking news. This is the information that we have, and they push that out to a lot of different news sources, all different types of news sources, whatever you can name them. It's probably being pushed out from AP. And like I said, in addition to that, be your own journalist, right? Be your own community journalist. Make sure that you're staying in the know of what's going on in your community or what's going on at your school. Because a lot of times too, we are soaking up and absorbing so much information, but we don't realize that we can be the newsmakers too, right? We can be the individuals telling those stories as well. I'm not saying you have to go and be a journalist. All I'm saying is you can help tell a story, right? If you see something that appears to be an injustice of some form and it's continuing to happen in your classroom, at school or at home or whatever the case may be with your friends, you can be that storyteller. So please don't think that just because you don't have a so-called title as a journalist that you can't go out there and impact someone's life by telling their story.
Exactly. No, I hope that my students wrote that down, because exactly. No, I echo all of that. I really hope that they take that from this conversation. Let's see. So more about you. You're a passionate, award-winning storyteller, and you've used your voice to educate people on many serious issues that directly impact our lives. More recently, you raised awareness in DFW, Texas, and the nation on the National Hair Movement and the Crown Act. Can you share with us how you came to focus on this story and why you felt it's so important to share with your viewers and followers?
Absolutely. So I just remember when I first got into this business, I used to wear my hair straight down. And if it wasn't straight down, like pressed out with all the heat that you have to put on your hair, or my textured hair to get it to straighten. If it wasn't that way, I was wearing a wig, a straight wig. And the reason that I was doing that was because I had this idea, and it wasn't just an idea, it's facts, that this was how you were supposed to show up as a journalist. And I distinctively remember when we would have what we call consultants, folks who tell you how you're supposed to look, talk, act, dress, all that kind of stuff. They would come into the station and they would show us these pamphlets of how a news anchor looks, how a news anchor should talk. Not a single news anchor in those pamphlets looked like me. Right. And so I just remember feeling like I was wearing this facade daily because I was wearing my hair straight and didn't feel like I can do anything differently. Same thing with like personality and talking and things like that. And I just remember going home crying. And I was like, I don't belong here. I know that this isn't, the place that I'm supposed to be. I had all kind of thoughts going through my head within my first job, which was in College Station, Texas, on air as a journalist. And so the reason the Crown Act came about is because in Dallas, Texas, within my first year being in Dallas, I started receiving not so nice emails and messages about the way that I was wearing my hair. I specifically wore a hairstyle that was like 4 buns down the middle of my head. And that became this just national conversation about professionalism on TV. And the conversation was centered around her hair is unprofessional. How do you guys allow her to show up looking that way on a morning TV show? And so that conversation just really sparked something in me. Even before that, I knew about the Crown Act, but I wasn't in the Crown Act like I got in the Crown Act after that situation. And so long story short, after folks started emailing in specifically about that one particular hairstyle, I was given the opportunity by my TV station to respond, to say something back. Now, usually, Haley knows me. Usually I'll respond on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. I'm quick to do that. But my station was like, no, you can do it here. So they allowed me to respond back to the viewers on air for 5 minutes. And if you know anything about TV, 5 minutes is a long time to have some airtime. So they allowed me to respond. And basically, in that response, it was a commentary. I asked the world, why does my crown offend you? And from there, it just took off. That video went viral. That led to the series Rooted, which was a transgenerational look at Black hair discrimination and also shedding light on the Crown Act so folks can be more familiar with it here in DFW and nationwide, because that series actually aired nationwide. And so that's what kind of got me to the point of being super involved with the Crown Act and making sure that I continue to amplify the voices and the work that's being done, because there are a lot of people that have been working a really long time, yourself included, Haley, to try to get this Crown Act passed. And my job, with the job that I have, is continue to amplify those voices.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this theme in your story of overcoming. And in the beginning, when you were an undergrad and changing your major and overcoming those fears of probably changing your major, overcoming that feeling of defeat, going into journalism, overcoming this as well. I see the way you wear your hair now. You're a lead in this. Yeah, I take note of your hairstyles when I see you. I'm like, that's cute. So I just know that you're inspiring young people all over the world to live out and proud and just really, really invest in themselves. So this is wonderful. I hope my students are really feeling this too. I say that I engage my students a lot during these conversations to hopefully have pin markers for them where they feel inspired, feel engaged, take note of what was said. So I really hope they're hearing.
I'm a sticky note girl, so I'm always like, ooh, I like that.
Right? Yes, exactly. So my next question, which plays kind of into what you were just saying, in this current climate, what role do you think journalists and news organizations have in educating the public about importance of issues in our community?
I think it's just as important as it's always been, right? I think back to the civil rights movement and the importance of media and the role that we played then with getting the messages out, or lack thereof, right? And so I think it's important, just as important as it's always been, because people are paying attention to what the media puts out. And when it comes to storytelling, if we're suppressing certain stories, then we're not getting the messages out that need to be out there. And I can give you some examples, and this is at no fault of anyone, but, when we have certain, our editorial meetings, that's my opportunity to speak up and say, well, what about Ralph Y'all? That's one of the newest stories that have come out here recently. Or what about, this story? I'm constantly trying to make sure that we're covering our bases. And I'm not the only person that speaks up in those meetings, but I just think it's important that news media continue to cover the story and continue to cover stories from all different aspects, and not, again, when something is just bad. We need to share the good news as well.
Exactly. And I'm really glad that we're finding connectors in our conversation to this question, because I want my students to focus on that one. Let's see. And then the next question was, what about ensuring diverse voices in this space? Why do we need diverse voices in news media, and what can my students do on top of what we've maybe already been talking about being their own journalists? What can they do to contribute to diversity in journalism, especially if they want to go into journalism?
Pay attention. I know that's easier said than done, but nowadays people are so like, I got my phone right here. Like, we're in these phones all day long and not trying to pay attention to actual media and information that's being disseminated to us, right? Pay attention to what's going on around you. Again, I said, whether it's in class, whether it's at home, whether it's in your community, pay attention. There are things going on in your community right now that you may not even be aware of, right? They could be about to build the next grocery store or about to build a city park. Do you know that that's happening? Do you know how to get civically involved in some of those different things? And I'm not saying you have to do that, but at least just be in the know. Exactly. I mean, you don't have to know every single thing, but just be in the know, pay attention, making sure that you are using your voice. And once you get of age, old enough to vote, I don't want to hear that about, my vote doesn't count. I don't want to hear none of that. Okay. That's one of the easiest ways, regardless if you go out and do one thing I said, this should be the one. Get out and vote and make your voice heard. But at the end of the day, just be in the know, like understand what's going on. Don't take, one person posting on TikTok at face value. Don't take one person posting on TikTok, Twitter or Instagram at face value. Really dig in and try to learn what is actually happening for yourself.
Exactly. No, exactly. I think that's wonderful advice, especially in this day and age of social media. As it's developed, it
Absolutely.
goes hand in hand with the traditional journalism on TV. So it's really important to continue finding diverse thoughts and diverse sources, just like you would with TV media news sources on social media as well.
Hmm.
That's very important and very probably relatable to my students as well, as they use TikTok and social media a lot. So two more questions for you,
Sure.
as you are very busy, as my students know, just based on your bio alone. So what advice can you share with my students who are thinking about becoming journalists?
I would say really just lean into all conversations, lean into all relationships. Don't let this class, don't let the person next to you just be a transactional move where you're trying to
Mm,
figure out what you can get out of them,
yeah,
but always come to a situation, a relationship with what can you add to it? What value can you add? I think relationships go a long way in journalism because you're going to want to talk to those same individuals who may not know the next journalist down the road, right? But they know that Tashara, for example, is in their community. They know Haley is in their community. They know they've seen Haley before. It's time to report on something negative surrounding the community, right? And so I would say lean into all relationships. Writing is so important, but so is sourcing, making sure that you're able to do good research. All of that is important. A lot of people always think that, as journalists, when they see us on TV, we've been there, what, 5, 10 minutes and boom, you're on TV.
yeah,
No, that is hours and hours and
yeah,
hours of work before you ever see us. And I'm just speaking specifically for the on air journalists, but there's so much work that goes into it, ensuring that you know how to write, ensuring that you know how to research. Those are my top two: writing,
yeah,
research. And the third one will be have compassion for people around you, compassion and empathy. A
yeah,
lot of times when you get in this field, journalism in particular, you see so much. I
mhm,
do mean you see a lot of bad stuff. You see a
yeah,
lot of good stuff, but you see way more bad stuff than
mhm,
good.
yeah,
And sometimes people lose their heart in all of this.
yeah,
So always remember to have heart, remember to have compassion. So those will be my top three for
yeah.
sure.
No, that's wonderful advice. That is wonderful advice.
Mhm.
And then for you, you are so amazing and authentic, and I've loved this conversation. I think that my students and I would all love to know what's next. Do you have things in the works that you can share with us? What's going on?
Well, I am working on a show, so it's at the very beginning stages.
Mhm.
We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. It takes a
Yeah,
lot of work and a lot of people to get there.
yeah,
So we are starting to trying rather to work on that. In addition, really just honing in on my craft. I want to be the best person at what I do, right?
yeah,
I want people to look at me and not be able to look past me,
right,
right? Because she's that doggone good. And so continuing to perfect the work that I'm already doing,
yeah.
and then ultimately growing even bigger. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think my students really could relate to that. I really
Hmm.
do. They definitely work every day very hard to write their papers and fine tune and edit every single day,
Hmm.
every minute, whether they're working on projects, presentations. I really think they'll relate to that.
Very
So,
good.
and
Very
we
good.
will all keep our eye out for what's next for Tashara Parker. So thank you so much for taking time to talk with me and my students virtual indirectly. Thank you so much for your time today. This was wonderful.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Haley.
Perfect.